Good evening and welcome to the June 24th, 2025 Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors work session. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Everybody is present except for Supervisor Halter, who is unable to make it to the meeting today. Supervisor Yiser is joining us virtually. Announcements. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is destroyed after the minutes are approved. The meeting will be posted online on the Township YouTube channel. The link can be found on the Board of Supervisors page on the Township website. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. And first item for discussion is the open burning ordinance. Peter, are you going to lead this, or?
I can, yes.
Okay.
So this ordinance was put together, I think initially by Jason with help from Chief Cass, and I also believe the Township Fire Marshal contributed towards this. Jason circulated something middle of last week. I looked at it this morning and gave some edits to it and kind of put it more in a traditional ordinance form that's ready for adoption if the board so chooses. Obviously, it's not advertised for tonight. I think it's just up for discussion tonight. I don't believe the board's plans to take any action on it. You want me to continue? Are you ready? Okay. I think, basically what the ordinance does is it classifies some different types of burning, different types of fires, really. We have recreational burning, which is what most residences do, as far as, if you're cooking outside or if you're just doing some sort of small fire outside, that's a recreational burning. There is also ceremonial burnings, which are similar, but they are specifically for some ceremonial purpose. There are burnings for basically yard waste. Those are a little more regulated, and you need to apply for or get a permit for those. And then there's some other types of burnings for training purposes, burnings for controlling pests, diseases, controlling for materials, burn down, do a controlled burn to help prevent wildfires. All those also require a permit. There's also regulations regarding burn bans. So like when we had the drought last fall and over this winter, there was a burn ban in place due to the lack of water and the dryness of the vegetation. We also have burn bans that could be based on high wind conditions. And then there's some other minor regulations regarding whenever you do a burning, the size of the fire, the location of the fire, the need to make sure you have extinguishment tools ready in case something gets out of hand, and the need to make sure that the fire is monitored by an adult at all times until it is extinguished. So that generally is what the ordinance covers.
So just so the board's aware, we do have Tom Gammon, our fire marshal, here. So if we have questions, Chief took off early from his conference, so he's here also. So the hope is that whatever changes we make or tweaks, that we can end this with a kind of a final draft. I thought maybe it'd be easiest if we went through kind of Peter's questions from his, because I did go through those with Tom. So the copies that you guys have, the blue was Peter's changes. Red was initially mine. So the first question posed was under 50-3A recreational burning. Should there be time limitations? In conversations with Tom, no limit on as far as time limitations with a recreational burning. The next question was approved containers, which Tom did get what these approved containers would consist of. I don't know, Tom, if you want to read those or if you want me to read that. Yeah, let me. So the question of what's an approved container, a non-combustible container enclosure engineered or designed for outdoor use such as a chimenea, outdoor fireplace, fire pit, or similar type container that can be purchased at local retailers. Any openings in the container must be covered with a wire mesh or other screening material that will prevent the passage of sparks and embers. So that's, does that answer that post?
I think if we're gonna, I think we just need some language in there that kind of just explains what an approved container is and who's approving it. That's all.
Do we add a definition or?
We can do a definition, or we can have language, containers that are approved by, our fire marshal or pre-approved by the township, something to that effect.
Is that acceptable to the board?
I think it would be useful to put approved container in the definition section.
Right.
Okay.
Jason, I'm looking at what's marked in our Dropbox as draft number 3, Peter edits,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So if I'm looking at 50-3A, recreational burning, number 1 says must be located at least 15 feet from any structure or property line. But then if I go down, oh, I see, that's under yard waste. So yard waste, we're recommending 50 feet.
Yes, that was a change by Peter.
Okay. Understood.
Unless it's an approved container, that's the either or.
Right, but it's always, the way I'm reading it, it's always 50 feet from a property line. Unless, do you know what I'm saying? Like B says if an approved container, but C just says from property lines.
Well,
We had it at 15 initially.
if you want to approve container 15 feet from a property line, that change can be made also.
Right, I'm just saying the way it reads now, it's always 50 feet.
Yeah.
Right, so if you want to have it in an approved container, you'll have to modify a little bit more than what I thought I heard you suggesting.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that could be 15 then?
Well, I'm just pointing out that that's the way it reads. I don't know how the rest of the group feels. But
Here, I'm gonna share so people can see what we're talking about here. Oh, come on. Seriously? Yeah, it won't come up. Okay. All right, so my PDF is not functioning properly. All right, so we're gonna stop that share. Okay, so it would be 15 from the property line if an approved container.
That's something
If the board
wants, yeah.
Was that list that you read off from Tom of the approved containers in general or just for yard waste? The only reason I'm asking is in the recreational burning definition, we have a whole slew of,
that works.
fire pit, chimenea. We already list some of those things, so just make that consistent.
Oh, yes.
Jason, I put my screen up.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Chuck.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll make those changes. Then the next question was limits of number of piles that can be burning at any one time. And talking to Tom, as long as someone must have an extinguishing source at each pile. So if they have multiple piles, also further taking that, or wait a minute, is it further down with, never mind. So that was something Tom wanted us to add for multiple piles, which I don't think is probably common, but I think this was part of the discussion with some of the larger properties that may have, they may not want to take it to their normal burning spot.
Mhm.
And then to kind of piggyback off that, in number 7, Tom recommended there's no limit. So if someone's doing a open burning for yard waste, that they should be calling the Montgomery County non-emergency line. There's no limit based on the size of the property. I know that was something we talked about last meeting, so his preference would be no limit.
Okay.
And then we would put on the burn permit, that's where the number for the non-emergency line would go.
Yeah, I think maybe that came up because I had suggested at a previous meeting that it would be nice if there was a way for people who have large properties who do have bonfires for maybe family gatherings, whatever, that they could still do that and be legal under this ordinance. Maybe that's how that crept in there.
Yeah, which is why, that's why I initially kind of worded it that way. So we'll put no limit with the language that I got, that was some of the language that Chief provided. As far as the next question would have been time limits for the ceremonial burning, which, as you can see, Peter added this. Once again, no time limit for the ceremonial burning. Any questions? And then the last question was as far as who should do the enforcement. And we needed to match what we're calling our AHJ. And once again, in talking to Tom, and as fire marshal, chief of police, police officer of the Lower Frederick Township Volunteer Fire Company, so there are times where Tom will go out. He can write the violation or note the violation and provide that report to chief. And so we just wanted we wanted the AHJ to match what was in here as far as the enforcement under the violations and penalties.
That's it.
So in 50-3, I think there's 4 types of burning we can do: recreational burning, burning of yard waste, ceremonial burning, and other permitted burning. And only burning of yard waste mentions a permit must be applied for and issued prior to burning. Do you need a permit for the rest of them? Because our ceremonial definition says the township needs to approve it.
For recreational and ceremonial, the ordinance, you don't need a permit for those. For the other permitted burnings, you do need a permit.
So for the ceremonial, the definition says shall be allowed only with prior approval from the township. So what would that, is that just
Is
an
that in
email?
the definition?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, then we probably should add the permit requirement there.
Okay, so recreational most likely will be the only one. Let's see what the other ones are. The other ones are fire company training. It says they do need a permit for that, which I don't know if they need to ask themselves.
Yeah, that was something
Yeah, you could probably drop that.
Yeah, Tom had pointed that out.
And then any fire set for the prevention or control of wildfires, disease, pests such as rats, snakes, bees, etc. And then permit required is crossed out, but that's because above it says you have to get a permit first. So who would be doing that? Is that a resident or is that like a township or government agency that would be doing,
Whoever is going to hold the burning has to get the burning permit.
okay,
So if it's a third-party agency who's doing it on, property they do not own, it could either be the property owner or that third-party agency that's doing the burning.
okay,
I think most of the time, it's going to be the property owner.
okay. And then we have the third option is agricultural burning, but then there's nothing, that's it.
It's defined in the definition
It is,
section.
okay. Thank you. Yeah, I would just make the first line in each of those, whether it requires a permit or very clearly state for recreational.
Right.
Does not require a permit if you follow these. That's all.
Yeah, make it front and center, where, so you don't have to read too far to find out whether you need a permit.
And there's a bunch of definitions that were deleted. They were deleted because those terms weren't used anywhere in the ordinance.
I'm still feel like the whole household trash, household items needs more defining. So under 50-4, number 1A, household trash, garbage or refuse of any kind. And then F says household items including but not limited to mattresses, furniture, appliances, or clothing. So what if someone wanted to burn, I don't know, what would not be in that group? Shoes or paint or, I mean, can we define household items and household trash to make it easier for people to understand, not say, oh, you didn't say that? Is there some definition that would be a little clearer?
I mean, we might be able to find a definition in state law
I mean, for
regarding
example,
solid waste.
like nowhere in there does it say plastics. What if someone wants to burn plastic bags?
It does say it under another line there.
Okay, tire, rubber,
tires,
plastics,
rubber,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I just think a definition would be helpful. That's all I've got. Sorry, one other question. So you can't burn less than 15 feet from a residence or 15 feet from a property line. So can folks in the townhouses comply with that?
Probably not.
I think it would be helpful to know if the property lines are more than 30 feet apart. If they are, then you could put it right in the middle. If they're not, then, because I know that there's some folks that do have like fire pits, and you're saying that has to be 15 feet from a residence and 15 feet from a property line. So I just think it would be helpful to just see if that's even possible in either of our townhouse communities, so we can give people guidance.
Do we have a current setback for that type of burning?
Well, don't most of these townhouses have more than 15 feet in the backyard? Well, if they have a 30-foot backyard behind the house.
It still has to be 15 feet from the side.
So one of the suggestions, Peter, was if they're in a townhouse, we would hope they're doing it in an approved container. We can lessen that distance and make it
Let's
less
say
than
maybe
15
like
feet.
12 feet?
You got feelings on that, Tom?
The biggest problems we have with townhomes
Yeah, he's just hit the button then, Tom. So it's green.
Biggest problems we have in the townhome develops is the smoke going, and we also had, there's something in the ordinance, I believe, if the smoke leaves your property, that we can fine them for that. That, the townhomes are a unique situation in the township because of the close proximity to everybody. So you're not, if we get called out and the smoke's leaving the property, most likely we're going to find them at that point in time. And how many fires do you see that the smoke does not leave the property? So it doesn't matter whether you have 12 feet or 15 feet, it's going to do that.
So what I'm kind of hearing you saying is we shouldn't give someone a permit if
Well,
we know
they're-
they're going to get fined.
They're not going to need a permit for recreational. And that would be a recreational instance,
Okay,
the chimeneas. The
Okay,
chimeneas,
all right,
anything like that is recreational, so they do not need permits for that. But if we are called out and there's a complaint from residents, a neighbor, something like that, we will in turn tell them to put it out. And
okay,
if they give us any grief, then most likely a fine will come after that.
okay.
Okay, because
Thanks.
we have had that numerous instances last year or two for that very reason.
Right now, under our current ordinance, it's a 25-foot setback from any fence line, trees, bushes, et cetera, and a 50-foot setback from any structure. So right now, under our current ordinance, I don't think any of the townhomes probably can do any sort of open burning.
Okay? You're welcome.
Yeah, I think when we're done with this, it'd be helpful. We've seen in like zoning and things like that, where you kind of have the chart, the type of burning. That way it's a nice little grid. Someone can just see exactly what they're trying to do. What do they need versus reading this. But let's get through the details and then
Yeah.
you can make it pretty later. And looks like, just real quick aerial, looks like 24 feet is the average single town, each townhouse. So 15 feet won't work.
And I know Spring Mount has language in their HOA document, but obviously with Cedar Hill not having an HOA, so
Yeah,
it still needs to get addressed in some shape or form.
Chuck, do you have anything else?
No, I do not. Thank you.
So what's next? Are we going to have a new version? Okay, and what does the board want to do? Put this on for next week? Is that enough time? Yes? Terry? Yep. Chuck, is that enough time for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right, great. All right. Okay, the next item is the use and occupancy expense inspection draft discussion.
Hold on, give me 2 seconds.
So I'll just read my little write-up while Peter gets ready here. As the board may recall, this was discussed last year at the June 25th work session. This draft was done by Peter. As you also may recall, the inspection, UNO inspection, would be considered a safety inspection, which I attached an example of what I've used previously. We did separate the rental inspection from this discussion, as that would be its own code. And we do know we did get some comments from residents when the board discussed that last year. The one thing we would need to confirm, if the board would like to make sewer lateral inspections mandatory for resale, as other municipalities do. As you're aware, we have started our R&I maintenance program for the sewer system, and this would allow the township to have issues remedied, fixed for laterals that are the responsibility of the property owner when they're selling the properties.
So this ordinance is kind of at the confluence of a lot of other ordinances and state law. You're basically, this, the permits discussed herein, there's basically 4 that we're kind of dealing with. And if you look at near the end of the ordinance, in the definition section that we're adding to the zoning ordinance, it kind of explains what they are. But you have the 4 ordinances, you have a zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinance is issued prior to something happening on a piece of property. And the purpose of the zoning ordinance is for the applicant to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is my plans. The township looks at it and says, yes, what you're planning to do complies with zoning. You get a zoning permit that memorializes that. There's a similar permit, it's called the building permit. That obviously is issued under the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code. It's the same sort of purpose. Before you want to do any sort of construction work that falls under the building code, you apply for a building permit to show that it complies with the UCC. There are then 2 permits that are kind of after the fact. You have a U&O permit, use and occupancy permit, and that kind of dovetails with the zoning permit. What the U&O permit says, and it should be issued, is after something is established, after something is built, the township issues that U&O permit to say, you comply with everything. You comply with zoning, you comply with the UCC, the building code, any possible township codes that are applicable to your project. The U&O, if it's issued, is saying, yes, you're in compliance with all those. The Uniform Construction Code, the building code, has a similar permit. It's called the Certificate of Occupancy. But what that does is that is issued once you're done constructing something that says you've constructed this in conformance with the building code. So all 4 of those permits are kind of involved in this particular ordinance, although the ordinance mostly focuses on the U&O permit, use and occupancy permit. Obviously, the zoning ordinance is really entangled with the zoning permit, and the UCC, the building code, really controls the building permit and the certificate of occupancy. The other aspect we have to keep in mind here is the state has what is called the Municipal Code and Ordinance Compliance Act. And this controls how use and occupancy permits can be issued, especially in regards to a transfer of property. This new act, it was revised, I want to say about 8 years ago by the state in response to a bunch of complaints from real estate agents. Basically, the real estate agents were complaining that they had deals that fell apart because municipalities would go out, do an inspection of a property that's being transferred, find so many problems with that property that they couldn't be fixed before the closing date. And so, buyers would be walking away, or it just caused a lot of problems. So the state enacted this current law that basically said, look, you can still go out and do these inspections upon transfer. However, if what you find, if the violations, the problems you find are minor in nature, they're not they don't involve threats to health and safety, you cannot refuse to issue a U&O before to correct it. You have to issue what's called a temporary U&O, and then the buyer is responsible for fixing these issues, and they have a year to do so. If they find something that is clearly a health and safety issue, yes, then that has to be fixed prior to the transfer, and the seller has to fix that. And so that particular state law, in preparing this ordinance, we have to make sure our ordinance complies with all the restrictions of that law. So that's why you'll see here, we redid Chapter 58, which was our current, occupancy permit ordinance. That was redone to reflect how these 4 different permits interact, and also to take into account this new state act to make sure we follow all of its requirements. And then, we then made some other changes to some other ordinances in the township code to make sure they all interact correctly together. Lastly, we do have some ordinance provisions regarding home inspections. When property is being transferred, there's a list of things that are supposed to be inspected for. That list is actually in our current property maintenance code. So I pulled it out of that property maintenance code and putting it here because I think it's a more appropriate place for it. I've also actually have prepared a new adoption ordinance for a new property maintenance code because our current property maintenance code is 2009, so it's 15 years old. Yeah, we really need to adopt a new one. Plus, there's some issues with that, so you'll be seeing that ordinance amendment probably within the next month. Once we get through these two ordinances, that would be something you'll be considering. So that's just an overview generally of the changes here and why these changes are taking place. If you have any particular questions, I can address them.
So that was helpful because I did have a question about the temporary permit. So you've answered that.
That's all state law.
Now I understand that. So what is in the category of health and safety? Plumbing, electrical?
I think the easiest thing, anything that creates a fire danger, electrical problems,
Okay.
lack of smoke detectors,
Yep.
that sort of thing, egress issues. There's rules regarding if you have a bedroom in the basement. I do believe the building code requires 2 egresses from the basement. So if someone is selling a house that has a bedroom in the basement and there's only 1 egress, doesn't comply with the building code. And that I would say that's a health and safety issue. Something along those lines. You see a lot of times when, in these transfer inspections where they cite people for, you got cracks in your walkway or your sidewalk. That's the sort of thing that's is going to lead to a temporary CO.
So what you're saying is, if I'm buying a house and there's a crack in the sidewalk, I have a certain amount of time to fix that? I mean, I would say that's minor. I mean, that's,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Under the state law.
and I have to pay for it. Can I negotiate to get the owner to pay for it?
Yes, you could. Yeah,
Okay.
that's all part of the deal between the buyer and seller. The only thing the township could do is say, hey, this, you violate our ordinance for this, let's say a crack in the sidewalk. And we're going to issue a temporary CO or temporary UNO. You buyer, you will have a year from the time you buy the property to correct this problem.
Okay.
And if the buyer wants to tell the seller, hey, you got to knock $1,000 off the price because I'm going to have to spend that much to fix the sidewalk, then that's between the two of them.
Okay. And the other question I had is about having a smoke detector in every bedroom. Is that a new state thing?
Well, if you see, that's one of the things I question. We need to talk to Vinnie Black at Berry.
Because I thought if you have, like in my house, for example, I have it in the hallway and all the bedrooms are
Yeah, and
there.
I actually think if you look at the modern building code, you need one on every floor.
Yep.
In the kitchen and in every bedroom.
in every bedroom.
Yeah, I believe that's what the rule is, but that's something we want to run by our code
Okay.
official to make sure it matches the building code.
That's how we took it, because a lot of people will sleep with it if the doors are closed.
Yeah.
So-
That's out of the fire, that's out of the fire code. So
Okay.
one of the things that I verified before the sample that I used at my previous stop, that was one of the things I wanted to verify. Because even in an attached garage, you're supposed to have a smoke detector. Some requirements, I think, is like a CO detector, but that's only if it's attached. If it's not attached, so that falls under the fire code.
Well, that would be helpful for everyone to know about, because and the other question I have is, if you're in a house that has whatever, technically if it has 4 bedrooms, but you're using one of them like as an office or something, like how do you define a bedroom?
There are definitely definitions on, when you're marketing the property, how you can market something as having 4, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms. And I think that's generally what is followed. Like I said, I think a bedroom, these days you have to have, you can't, one, it has to have a closet usually. 2, you can't get through, you cannot have a bedroom where the only way to access it is going through another bedroom. I think you also if you have a bedroom, there has to be a bathroom on the same floor as that room. There's a set of rules. I don't know exactly what they are, but there are things like that.
Okay, thank
I
you.
was saying I'm reading the Pennsylvania code. It says should have one operable automatic smoke detector on each floor, including the basement and attic. There should be an operable automatic smoke detector located within 15 feet of each individual bedroom door. And then some other stuff.
So obviously where houses, you have nonconformities because there are houses that are built that don't have bathrooms on the top. So I think what you're talking about would be like new construction.
Yeah.
As far as,
There's differences between new construction and existing homes.
yeah, you're not going to make somebody put in a bathroom because it doesn't exist.
So given what Chuck read, which is how I would understand where they should go, that's inconsistent with what this is saying. So how do we resolve that?
Well, like I said, we are going to talk to our code official, and whatever he says, that's what we're going to go with.
Yep. I mean, it's not as much of a hardship as it used to be because I believe you can still have wired, as long as there's electrical power going to it. I think you can still have wireless communications, but that Vinny, I'm sure, will clarify too.
Yes.
So what we're looking at here is, actually, the question I was going to ask was, I know at one point we had these inspections for use and occupancy. Do we know how long it's been since we went to the honor system?
I think somewhere 16 to 18, I think,
Okay.
is when.
But that was probably the 2008 code or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was maybe 17 or 18 because when I bought my house, they found some electrical upgrades that were required, and I was really happy they did that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's stuff like GFIs.
It was
near-
GFIs, yeah, in
Near,
the kitchen.
like 6
yeah.
feet within a.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We went through it. So I guess just, looking at real estate transactions, which we look at, once in a while, you see a lot of the $1 family estate, just person to person. How do we exclude those from having to go through a full inspection? Is that already written in here somehow? When it's not actually someone buying or selling it, or family member, or legal reasons?
Usually, in my experience, those transfers are not done. I don't think this ordinance specifically addresses that, but it certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any family member, I don't.
Yeah.
A lot more of those transfers happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, no, I agree. It's unnecessary.
Okay. And then I noticed another, I don't know if we're open to discussing everything, but Article 2, sewage management fee. It looks like it's only for on-lot sewage disposal systems. What would that include besides just proving that it's been pumped in the past 3 years? Page 13.
So usually, usually there will be an inspection of the system. And we want, I think usually the township wants that inspection to be filed with the township to say that the system is functioning appropriately. So it's more than just a pumping
But is
usually.
it our person doing the inspection, or that owners have to provide
Usually it's usually, I believe, a third-party inspector that then.
part of the report when they pump, saying
Yeah,
it looks
when they
good?
pump, they can do it. But, if there was a pump, 6 months ago, they just would come out and do the inspection, not repump it usually. And, that's a fee we currently have. I don't know how long the fee's been in there.
Can I request, before we get too far away from the smoke detector issue, if you could also check with Vinny? I think we talk about having smoke detectors or working smoke detectors, and I think we need to define what a working smoke detector is, right? Because a smoke detector typically is only good for 10 years. And then they have issues detecting smoke. Heat, no problem. Smoke, problem. I know this because I've had friends who've died from a smoke detector that didn't detect anything but heat. So I kind of feel strongly we should have language in there that if those things are older than 10 years, if that's what the magic number is, which it seems to be, that those things have to be replaced.
We can talk to, I believe the UCC addresses that, but we'll talk to Vinny about that and
Yep,
whatever is the best way to deal with it, we will.
thanks.
Yep. Any other questions? I guess the one other question, yeah, I don't know, the board wants to address this, or this is something we can do internally with staff, is requirement regarding street identification numbers. So this is a requirement to make sure every house has their address located so it's highly visible to people on the street, most importantly, emergency responders. There's a classic, pretty traditional requirements that you see. I have them currently in this ordinance, but they're also at times we also most places have them in their property maintenance code. So right now I have them in both draft ordinances. We just have to decide which one we want to keep them in. So like I said, if you guys don't want to get into weeds, something staff can discuss, or if you have an opinion, please let us know.
No, I think that's really important. I did notice that there was a prohibition against putting the house number, painting it on the curb. Is there a reason for that?
Well, we own the curbs, so it's more of, we don't want them, quote unquote, defacing township property.
Okay.
And that if they want to paint it on the curb, yeah, come see us, and if we say, yes, you can paint it on the curb, go right ahead. But you'll also notice that even if they paint it on the curb, that's not a replacement, that's in addition to
Okay.
doing the numbering. I think the curb painting, it could be nice, but at night in bad weather, it's not highly reflective, it's not easy to see. The numbers are made to be seen in those sorts of situations, so that's why you want them.
Sure, they're covered with snow and ice, right?
Yeah. And so folks who have long driveways, there has to be something at the bottom of the driveway?
Yes.
Okay.
And even if you have a small lot, you got to put the number in such a way, if you want it only on your house, it's got to be visible from the street. And it can't be like in, cursive writing or something that's next to impossible to read.
Yeah, I guess we've discussed this before, but we're not the only township with this. So if we're talking to Vinny about it, let's just see if there's something that he can recommend that he sees somewhere else and borrow it. I see we have a few examples in here as well that might be from Vinny. And then, of course, talk to our fire company as well. They tend to see the inside of a lot of these houses, probably some of the rentals as well, to see what issues they actually encounter.
Yep.
So how does everyone want to proceed? Should we wait for a new draft with some of those additions and discuss again at our next work session?
You want to, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's get you another draft before any action.
So the only thing is if the board's interested in the sewer lateral inspections, which is not in this draft. But it is something that
Yeah, I remember that Bob Preston recommended those to identify any issues, so I think it's a good idea.
Because I know like with the I&I work we're going now, we're not going to necessarily see the lateral, like it's going to go so far in the main.
Yep.
But if it does see it, we wouldn't have the ability to repair them anyhow. Because it's not plus that's not where they're coming, where they're coming through and doing the cammering. Because that was one of the things that was discussed kind of at our pre-meeting.
Yeah, and I think a buyer would want to know if there's an issue with the septic system. And that's part of it.
You mean with the lateral?
Lateral,
lateral.
yeah.
That wouldn't be,
It's fine.
that inspection we're talking about would not be septic system.
No, this is
Only public
this is
sewer.
public sewer.
Yeah. I mean, Schwenksville has that
That,
currently, right?
yeah, that's why we included that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they require a camera or?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's
So-
kind of like what you want that baseline so that,
Yeah.
we have that baseline of what that lateral looks like at a
Sure.
certain time.
And for what we spend in I&I,
Already doing it, right?
For
Yeah.
Schweitzer, yes. So
Yeah.
that's what we talked about last year is we already have some of our residents that are on the western are required to do that.
yeah.
So I'm sure I'll get corrected if I'm wrong here, but I think in our township, we might refer to this lateral as a building sewer. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's probably correct.
So that's the words we should be using unless we're changing it in other places.
Well, Chuck, if we add that language, I usually do a search through the township code for that, make sure that everything matches up correctly, so I'll do that.
Okay. Yep.
Would the township do that, or would you have the homeowner hire somebody to do it, and they give you the film?
I think we normally third party would do it. The homeowner would have to, usually.
Hire a plumber to.
Yeah, the seller would do it, provide us with the certificate and provide the buyer with the certificate.
That keeps the township, from spending the money.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we want to have the manpower to have to do that.
That's why,
Yeah, we talked about, I gave some examples last year. I pulled a couple of when we talked about it, and it kind of ranges from company to company. I think it was between $80 and $200, I believe, somewhere $300, somewhere in there.
The other issue is the tenant registration that's in this ordinance. This is where landlords just inform the, the township of, the tenants of their properties, and that when the tenants change, they let the township know. It's mostly an emergency services issue just for us to understand who's in what buildings. But, we don't have to have it. Not a lot of places do. I would say most bigger townships do, most smaller townships do not. But that's something, the board needs to decide whether or not they want.
On that,
Is there? Go ahead, Marla.
sorry, this is a little bit tangential to that topic, but what would be our rules for inspecting rentals? Never?
We're keeping that separate right now because that was
We will address it separately.
there'd be a separate rental
Okay,
ordinance, and that would
okay.
be that'll be a different discussion.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
So my question is to Peter. You mentioned that larger townships tend to have this provision of reporting. Is there a reason for that? Is there some sort of burden that it's putting on the township that a larger township is better equipped to absorb, or is it just the way it works?
I think it's just more of the way it works.
Okay.
And I think larger townships have seen, I think they look at it and think it's useful, and their emergency services and their police departments like that fact that they, have at least an idea of what they're getting into when they go into rental housing. But I mean, certainly some of the smaller townships, the really small ones that have part-time, staff and thing, every extra little thing can be a burden on them. But I don't think keeping track of this is a huge deal.
Right now, we generally only find out with the public sewer, because 2 bills will go out in some cases to the actual landlord and to the property. So that's right now. We do find out on some of those rentals, but that's the only way right now we're finding out generally.
Well, I guess you can solicit feedback from, police and first responders and see what they think. Or is that going to delay things?
That's fine, Chuck.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see it would be useful to at least know if somebody is living in a building, if there's a fire, if the fire company comes, is it empty or is it occupied? I mean, that would be useful.
Or, is it occupied by a single person or a family of 5?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so is everyone okay with looking at this again at the next work session?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
That's fine. And if we have a full night, the next one's fine too.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
rush on this.
Okay. All right. Next item is Park and Recreation request for community art presentation.
That's fine. Okay. Okay, so first of all, thank you for letting us present tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Park Board, and we're going to share our proposal for launching a community art initiative. And we wanted to begin with a fence painting project at Cuddy and Foy Park. But before I begin, I did want to give a special thank you to Becky Strawbridge. She's been instrumental in bringing this idea to life for us, and she's poured a lot of care and effort into moving it forward. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, so I'm presenting in her absence. So if we could go to the next slide. So what is community art? I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but it's more than just a decoration. It's actually a way to bring people together. It's going to reflect on our township's shared values, and it's going to breathe some life into our public spaces. These types of projects are typically shaped by community input and involvement, and very often we have professional guidance when we're doing this. They're fun, they're inspiring, and it's also been proven to increase engagement with the local parks. Going to the next slide. So in brainstorming what this could potentially look like for Lower Frederick, the Park Board discussed a bunch of different ideas. We talked about murals, sidewalk art, light and utility post decoration, and we even talked about some pop-up installations. But with so many possibilities, we did want to focus on something that was a little bit more manageable and impactful from the very beginning. So moving to the next slide, title says it, so many projects, so little time. We did come up with a lot of really creative ideas as the board, but just to give a little background, we do have to thank Melissa from Engage Art Studios because she did take the time to meet with us on 2 separate occasions, and she did offer us some expert guidance. She also gave us valuable insight into different areas in our around surrounding areas that have community art, and she gave us a lot of direction on how we can move forward efficiently. After reviewing the Park Board ideas that we put together, she did recommend that we narrow our ideas down to 3 key projects, and then she helped us hone in on the best starter project for the Park Board. So tonight, what we're doing is we're presenting our project number 1, which is fence painting at Cuddy and Foy Park. And we are hoping that this is just the beginning as we continue to grow this initiative. And we do hope to provide similar future presentations for other art projects. And then obviously, we're always open to suggestions from residents and then also supervisors, of course. Moving to the next slide. So how did we get here? Actually, we're on the previous slide, but so the fencing and kiosk at Cuddy, and then the fencing and the no parking gate at Foy Park, they have some really great bones. They just need a little bit of TLC. So rather than replacing it, what we'd like to do is actually transform it. So with a fresh coat of artful paint, not just paint, and also some expert guidance from Melissa at Engage Art Studios, we believe that we can make these structures become a little bit more cheerful and some meaningful landmarks that, for our parks that we have here in the township. So the next slide shows Cuddy Park. You're going to see the fencing and then also the kiosk that we're looking to start this initiative on. And then the next slide is Foy Park. And you can see that the fence there needs a lot of care to get it into a presentable structure. And then also the no parking gate at the front is something that we'd be considering as well. Any questions so far?
I noticed that in the previous slide, looks like there's a piece of fencing missing. Are you going to put, pardon?
Yeah.
Oh, it has. Oh, it's an old picture.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So moving on to the next slide, the question that you probably have is, how are we actually going to do this? How are we going to execute this? How are we going to pay for this? So here's the exciting part. Melissa has generously offered to donate her time, her expertise, her paint, and her supplies for both of these projects. So that's great news. We're lucky to have her in the township to be able to help with these things. And then Tommy, our roadmaster, has agreed to power wash the surfaces prior to the actual activity so that it's in a good condition for us to actually paint. The only expense that we have is the seal coat, and we've already unanimously approved the purchase of this at our June 2nd meeting if we receive supervisor approval to move forward. That being said, we are planning to reach out to Sherwin-Williams to see if we can get that seal coat donated to cover the cost. So in order to engage the community, what we would like to do is market the Cuddy Park fence and kiosk painting as a pop-up community event sometime in probably August or September. And then we're hoping to have the Foy Park project be an actual activity at our Fall Fest, which is October 4th. So that's what we would like to do. Participation obviously won't be limited to just Lower Frederick residents because they're public parks and public events, but we do plan to clarify with Melissa to see if she thinks that this should be a 12+ age requirement for these two events. Any questions on execution and cost before we move on to the inspiration, the fun stuff for some of the designs that we were looking at? Okay, next slide. The next slide does have pictures on it in the slide deck, and basically what the pictures are, I have a slide if anybody wants to take a look. There are pictures of fences that this has already been done in different communities. They're not necessarily the split rail fences that we're looking at, but what you'll see is that there's very natural designs on these flowers, vines, that type of thing. But we haven't decided on the designs because we wanted to make sure that we had supervisor approval prior to going any further. There are just some examples of the art that we're envisioning. We're considering as the park board some small pops of colors, but we definitely want to keep the art as close to nature as possible. We have some samples of more natural colors, thanks to Pam, that we could use, and just kind of keeping with flowers and vines and that type of thing that we're going to see in nature. Obviously, all of the artwork would be designed and advanced with Melissa's help. We are not just going to go to the park and start painting. There's going to be a plan, there's going to be a process, and we want to make sure that it's classy and tasteful. Oh, there we go. So you can see some of those examples. Moving to the next slide. So next steps. So what we're actually here tonight for is we're asking your approval as the supervisors to paint the fencing in the kiosk over at Cuddy Park, to paint the fencing and no parking gate at Foy Park, and then proceed with actually getting these scheduled pop-up painting events. One thing we did want to discuss is future maintenance, because we figured that might be a concern as well. If new fencing is ever installed in the future, we can definitely recreate the artwork, and we could even update the designs if that's something that we thought was a good idea. So basically, in closing, this is a sustainable, affordable, and high-impact way to highlight our parks and then also bring people together for a fun community event. And we appreciate you guys listening, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
I have two questions for
Sure.
now. How are you going to solicit people to come to do it? Like, how are you going to get the word out? And if you have like 500 people show up, I mean, how are you going to manage that process?
So what we were thinking is we could, to solicit, we could use the social media, we could use the newsletter. And then as for control of the event and how that's going to be organized, we will have Melissa there, and then obviously the park board members to oversee the painting and the guiding of the volunteers. And then we'll coordinate the logistics, the scheduling, volunteer signups. We may have to limit the number of people that are in attendance, but those are all things that we can hammer out and get guidance on as well.
And the other question is, what's your quality control going to be? You're going to have a bunch of 8 or 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds painting flowers? You're going to stencil them in, or?
Yeah.
Pardon?
Defined and like drawn up for them. They won't be able to like paint their hand and all that stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
It'll be defined what they're gonna do.
so there'll be some supervision.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Melissa
right.
will be the expert artist in residence, and then we'll have the park board there as well to make sure that we're not getting some weird stuff on the fences. So, yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think it,
Go ahead, Terry.
yeah, I think it sounds good. And if there's any inspiration you can do at the Public Works Building, you can paint the whole thing.
Well, that, the other two projects that we thought of, and I didn't even think of the Public Works Building, but was the dugouts over at Coble. We were thinking of those, and then some of the utility posts, but that's a big canvas, Terry. So, thank you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you for bringing this to the board. I've participated in similar events in the past, and it's a lot of fun. My father was an artist. He would be the person who would sort of draw out what everybody had to fill in, and it was a lot of fun. So I think it's great. Thank you.
Perfect.
And, sorry, what's your timeline for this? You're looking to do it over the summer?
Yes, so for the Cuddy Park, we would like to do an event in August and September, and then for Foy Park, we're looking to coincide with the Fall Fest on October 4th.
But you want approval today?
We are seeking approval today if possible. If you need to consider it, maybe we could get it added to the agenda next week.
I don't know, I mean,
Make a motion.
I'll make Chuck Geisel will make a motion to approve the board request for, what's the right word? Fence painting or no? Community art project number 1.
yeah, approval for the community art project at Cuddy Park and Foy Park.
Perfect.
Okay, so Supervisor Yiser made the motion.
Second it.
Supervisor Sachs made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Thank you.
opposed?
Sorry.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And we're looking forward to future initiatives as well, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can also use, I'm assuming you could send out a blast. Yeah, okay.
Because right now we've got the draft, so I think maybe that'll help. It'll get an extra.
Yeah, put it on our website and Facebook and, yeah,
Yeah, and if you do run into a situation where maybe Sherwin-Williams either isn't donating or isn't donating the full cost, I'm sure there might be people who would consider contributing to the park board to make up whatever is not covered by Sherwin-Williams.
I mean, you're not talking $10,000, you're talking maybe what, like 300 or 400?
No idea.
Okay, all righty. And thanks to Becky Strawbridge for initiating this. All right, last item on the agenda, fire police request, Limerick and Skippack Township. They're looking for, I don't have the memo because I can't get into my Dropbox, but they're looking for support for Limerick for their 4th of July festivities and fireworks, and for Skippack Township for their 4th of July parade. Any questions on this? No? Okay, would someone like to make the motion? And the motion would be, I move to authorize the use of Lower Frederick Fire Company Fire Police at the request of Limerick Township for their 4th of July festivities and fireworks, and for use at the request of Skippack Township for their 4th of July parade.
Chuck Yiser, so moved.
Thank you. Supervisor Yiser made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Supervisor Byrd made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, Chuck, you're an aye?
Yeah, aye. Yep. Mhm.
Hear you. Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of the business portion of our meeting. Now we are at public comment. Go ahead, Crystal.
There we go. Crystal Gilchrist, 126 Gerloff Road. I want to talk tonight about Gerloff Road. We recently had the tar and chip done to the road, and I understand that that's our regular maintenance regime, and that's fine. The weather hasn't been very cooperative, so we had a river of tar a couple days ago, and that's being worked on. My concerns are more for the shoulder conditions of Gerloff Road. We've got more and more traffic on Gerloff since the bridge has been opened. It's become a pretty significant cut through from Limerick over to 29. There are places where the shoulder is completely non-existent, and you've got 6, 8, 10-inch drop-off immediately off the edge of the road. People who go off the edge either can get stuck with their car ground on the road, or a couple of years ago, a young lady overreacted when she went off the road. She turned too fast and ended up flipping her car because of the shoulder conditions. So plus the tree crews have been through and they dropped a lot of timber, and it's not just miscellaneous pieces of wood, it's timber, large logs that are really immediately adjacent to the edge of the road, within an inch or two, right off the edge of the road. And the drainage along Gerloff Road in some places is ridiculously bad. At the corner of Yerger, the road is washing away because of the drainage issues there, and all up and down the hill. I would like to suggest that because this has become kind of a major traffic route through the township, that A, we get some data by having a traffic count done, and B, we begin to look at how we can improve the conditions of the side of that road. I'm not talking about widening the road. Everybody loves the country lane, but there has to be a safe shoulder on that road where people can escape the traffic if they're walking, and people do walk that road. My son was run off the road 2 days ago, ended up all scraped up because he had to dive into the ditch when a car came by. It's not safe, and we're going to get in trouble in the future by not doing some maintenance on that road. I've lived there now for 22 years. It's gotten progressively worse. We continue to tar and chip. We never repair the road. It's time to start thinking about that, and I think it's a serious condition, especially with the timber that's out there now. Some people have the wherewithal to clear their frontage. They have a chainsaw, they have a strong back, maybe they have a truck. Other people do not. And there are large logs out there. It's not just little pieces of firewood. It's large logs, and it needs to be addressed. So I would like to suggest that we start figuring out how we're going to incorporate that into our budget going forward, because it needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren, go ahead.
Warren Jacobs, Fulmer Road. My comment's about Gerloff Road too. I was just on it today, and I'm going to ask that if it's possible for Carol to take a drive on that before the next meeting and look at how the tar and chip project turned out, and tell me if she thinks that it came out as to expectations. There's some things that I think are kind of funny about it. It's like bumpier than it was before. I don't understand the process of how it went, so I'd like the engineer's opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
I too was on Gerloff Road today and saw the same situations. I think what Crystal said goes throughout a lot of our roads where we have shoulders that if you drop off of them, you're going to flip your car, you're going to get stuck, whatever. So there's a lot of preemptive work that we need to do. I believe I brought this up last year, that before we did any tar and chipping this year, we should get out there and take care of some of those issues. So now we're doing something after the fact, and it's going to cause damage to the road. Obviously, with the 100-degree weather we're having, it's causing more bleed through. Doesn't help that Tuesday is trash day, and, when they're taking the corners, the tandem axles are pulling it up. So it's something that we have to look at, and I do agree that Carol should go out and take a look at it and see what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on Zoom? Is that a comment?
It's just a statement. Phil brought up. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? The tar and chip has made for health and with the amount of dust generated, because AMS has been adding more material on top. So that's what was happening last night. So it is making it dusty.
It hasn't corrected the spots where there's big holes. I mean, the So- layer of tar and chip is not consistent throughout. It's bumpier now than before it was treated. If I might offer some information, I'd be happy to. So I am very aware of Gerloff Road. I was out there around June 9th when we first had some bleed through and some pickup. I called Asphalt Maintenance Solutions, who did the work out there, and they were out there that same day putting down screenings to soak up some of the bleeding. This week, we're having a much bigger problem. And it's not just us. The state roads that I live on had been chip sealed, and they have all been screened too. They're having the same problems up near me on State Road and Richland Town Pike and all the roads up there that they did. So once that emulsion gets to 120 degrees, it liquefies. And that's what's happening on Gerloff Road, and that's what's happening in a number of other places. I'm not aware of that kind of problem on the other 5 roads that we did. Gerloff seems to be the worst. I believe that, when you are chip sealing a road, there's equations you follow based on the volume of traffic you're anticipating on that road. If there's less volume of traffic, you do more emulsion. If there's more volume of traffic, you do less. I have a suspicion those guys went out and saw our little narrow country road and thought nobody much could be driving on this road, and went a little heavier on the emulsion than they should. However, AMS has been extremely responsive. They came out the first day we called. They came out yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon and again this morning. They're staying on top of it. They're promising me that they're going to make it right. They're going to come back when the weather is cooler. They're anticipating an August timeframe when they will come back and fix any of the divots in the road that are caused by that pickup. So that will happen. It won't happen tomorrow. It's going to happen as we get through after we get through these hottest days of summer. And until that happens, they have pledged to answer our calls and get out here and add additional stone to soak up any material that soaks up through. So it's frustrating and regrettable for all of us, but I do appreciate the responsiveness of the contractor in trying to address this.
Thank you, Carol. Hopefully that's helpful. Any other public comment? Okay, that brings us to supervisor comment. Go ahead.
Yep. So third annual blood drive is coming up on July 29th, 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We observed last year and the year before, there's a lot of folks in this room, families of folks in this room, our employees, first responders were a lot of the big donors. So please roll up your sleeve this year and come on out. Thank you, Jason and the staff for putting it on the calendar. Please get the message out. If you see it on Facebook, share it. If you write articles for newspapers, put it in those. Anything to help. Thank you. Yeah. So July 29th, 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock here at the Township Building. Thank you.
Yeah, my supervisor comment is just, I guess, a little bit of educational value. So just for those folks who see us going into our closed-door sessions and wonder what we're talking about and why they don't know what we're talking about and when they're going to hear what we're talking about, I just wanted to read the code about executive sessions. An agency may hold an executive session for one or more of the following reasons: to discuss any matter, this is number one, discuss any matter involving the employment, appointment, termination of employment, terms and conditions of employment, evaluation of performance, promotion, or disciplining of any specific prospective public officer or employee or current public officer or employee employed or appointed by the agency, et cetera, et cetera. Number two, to hold information strategy and negotiation sessions related to the negotiations or arbitration of a collective bargaining agreement, or in the absence of a collective bargaining unit, related to labor relations and arbitration. 3, to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease the real property is obtained, et cetera. 4, to consult with its attorney or other professional advisor regarding information or strategy in connection with litigation or with issues on which identifiable complaints are expected to be filed. 5, to review and discuss agency business which, if conducted in public, would violate a lawful privilege or lead to the disclosure of information or confidentiality protected by law, et cetera. 6, for duly constituted committees of a board or council of trustees of a state-owned, state-aided, or state-related college, university, or community college to discuss matters of academic admission or standings. That's obviously irrelevant to us. We're not a school. 7, to discuss plans or review matters and records that are deemed necessary for emergency preparedness, protection of public safety and security of all property in a matter that, if disclosed, would be reasonably likely to jeopardize or threaten public safety or preparedness or public protection. And I can assure you, our solicitor makes sure that when we are in executive sessions behind closed doors, we are talking about one of those 6 items. That's all I have.
My name is Ron Sparks. I've been struggling to try to get my wraparound built around my house, and I'd like to know what the conflicts and things that are against the building of my wraparound, and why doesn't it want to meet the codes of Lord Frederick, and also why was I, as a disabled vet also, while I was in the hospital, charged a late fee from my power of attorney, which is no longer my power of attorney. And I appointed Jeff Stressman in the back and my contractor, and also my financial analyst to be Ted Clark. And the jeoparditions of what needs to be done, I'd like to find that out in writing, please.
Sir, I think your best bet would be to come in during office hours and speak to our manager.
Officer Milligan, and you guys wanted to bill me $35 late fee, plus another $9 and some cents for a bad check that the bank gave me, gave Helen. And how many more bad checks have there been? I don't know. I know one to the water department, and I'd like those fees credited back to me. Thank you kindly.
Yeah, sir, that's not
And
really,
Also, one more thing. We had 2 high water in the last couple of weeks. Why can't the fire company get down there and get some of those logs and pull them up? If they're gonna burn them at the bonfire, fine. I'd even be willing to help and burn some of the wood at my place. Thank you kindly.
Jason, can you speak with this gentleman and see if you can help him? Thank you. Sir, our manager, Jason here, when the meeting's over, you can speak with him. Sir, our manager right here, Jason? Sir? Can,
You better-
okay, meeting is adjourned.
No, no, nope.
No?
In
No, I'm sorry.
regards
Oh,
to.
we had an executive,
Exactly.
you should have reminded me, no one reminded me.
We're just reminding you.
We had an executive session prior to this meeting.
To discuss litigation, real estate, and labor.
Thank you. Discuss litigation, real estate, and labor. And hereafter I read the thing. Sorry, I don't usually run these meetings, so I'm out of practice. Sorry about that. Now? Okay, meeting's adjourned.